Okay. So, hi everyone. I'm Shilina Golez. I usually go by my name as Boshin, my nickname. Currently, I'm the Department of Mission and Social Involvement Secretary under CSG. So, the Department on Mission and Social Involvement, or DMSI, as we like to call it to make it shorter, is the official social involvement and advocacy arm of CSG. So anything that involves the CSG to reach out to certain communities or to allow our constituents to engage on certain movements or social issues or things that we need to put light on, that's the responsibility of our department.
The topics does not just pertain to sex education. It is other topics. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's not only about sex education. It's also about like, gender identity, on consent, sexual assault. We invited seasoned professionals that are more well versed on topics on sexual health, usually from the medical community. We've invited doctors from CDO. We've also invited gender psychologists, gender community trainers, so that we ensure that the information relating to the participants of this initiative are gaining credible information from credible people.
All right, thank you for that. So basically, anyone can join this seminar. Is that it?
Yeah. We highly encourage the students from Xavier Ateneo to engage in it, but it's not limited to them.
Okay.
We also opened our doors to students from other universities and institutions.
This is an interesting topic because during, when we were going grade school, high school, gender was not.
It was different way back then.
Yeah,
So,
actually.
could you maybe give us an idea of how that this topic has come into discussion here in Cagayan?
Actually, what you mentioned isn't that much different to what we're also used to before back in elementary or in high school, because it usually goes a bit filtered out when it comes to gender identity and awareness of yourself. When it comes to things like that, even before, I think not everyone was well aware of SOGI, like sexual orientation, gender identity, gender expression. But right now, we saw to it that it's a topic that usually gets overlooked at. Like it doesn't get talked about enough. That's why we thought that it would be important for the participants, in order for them to also know how to protect or to maintain their sexual health. It's also important or vital for them to to engage on their gender identity and sexual orientation.
Let's just contrast this to other places that are also bringing up these topics, like in California.
Yeah, in the West. Yeah.
In the West, they are mandating as early as 5 years old that parents. And this is passed for I think several years now, that the parents are mandated as early as 5 years old to discuss the topic of gender, that the child should be considering how they identify with gender. Is that can you give us an idea of like those kinds of maybe mandates or bills that are happening here in the local scene?
Just recently, actually, there was an ordinance passed. It's an anti-discrimination ordinance for also our brothers and sisters that are part of the LGBTQ plus community. It was just recently passed, I think a week ago or 2 weeks ago. But prior to that, I think it's a topic that usually gets overlooked. Like, that's also why we wanted to open the discussion on gender identity, because I think there's a stigma to it, or like usually people think that we're forcing homosexuality or anything that's besides being straight to our children or to youth because of this. But I think that's also where the misconceptions lie, because there's a great difference between indoctrinating something and educating them of what they could be. Like, it's something that could promote them to be more self-aware, because it's not just limited to me being a male or a woman, or it goes way beyond that. And then that's why we tried to open this discussion up. And just recently, an ordinance on anti-discrimination has also been passed by our local government unit. But prior to that, I'm not familiar with any ordinances that actually talk about our gender identity and sexual orientation.
Okay, but that's it's a great initiative, and that's why the initiative is a hashtag with tough conversations. Is
Tough
that
conversations.
so?
Yeah.
Pound hashtag tough conversations, and people can find that hashtag. Where would they be able to see that? On Facebook?
On Facebook and on Twitter.
Yeah, that was pretty controversial. I heard about that a couple of months ago with the bathroom thing, the restroom, having a separate restroom for the LGBTQ. Yeah, if it's still an ongoing issue right now. But yeah, it's a good thing that they passed that bill to protect our LGBTQ community here. So that's a good start for now. Although some of them are pushing for, I think, a gay marriage for here in the Philippines. I'm not sure what the progress is as of now.
Shilina, in terms of the webinar, this is a topic that it sounds like it's being discussed. Is what day of the webinars can people join to listen to that or join that conversation?
They can join from September 2 to 4, since the webinar discussion has different topics it covers each day. For day 1, it's more on like an overview of sexual health. For day 2, it's on safer sex, STD awareness and prevention, and sexual consent and assault. And then for day 3, which is September 4, it's about gender identity and sexual orientation.
All right. Day 2, what was that?
Consent and
Consent.
sexual assault.
All right. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, that's actually a good. Is that the digital format? Is that involved in the webinars, Shilina?
The digital,
like online, obviously there's consent, like you said, but there's also the online format in terms of people engaging in sexual conduct, not just physical, but there's there might be sexting, right? This is another area where, of course, it's not just young people, right? Everyone's kind of sexting, sending pornographic pictures on Messenger or whatever it might be. Is this something that's also discussed in the webinars?
I think the speaker for that topic would be using this an overview on sexual consent and assault. But I think he will be contextualizing it to what's happening right now, especially that we're more engaging online since we can't do things on site or physically. So yeah, I believe that the speaker will be talking about that as well.
And maybe we can give the listeners an idea of how is sexual health kind of defined in the context of the initiative? Like, what does that actually mean to have a healthy sexual approach to oneself or to the conduct that they're engaging in with another person?
Okay, so actually, like, a general objective of this initiative is to educate the community on sexual health and provide an avenue for discussion to eliminate existing conceptions about sexual health and identity, right? So the participants are able to gain a grasp of its relevance both as an individual and at a communal scale. I think there was a law, or there was a mandate that instigated Dept to integrate sex ed on basic education institutions, like how it's related to our body, physical health, how it's related, like how sexual health applies to the individual in terms of our own physical health. At the same time, how it applies to our economy. For example, if there isn't proper family planning, what happens if we create more unwanted pregnancies, what would that implicate then to population growth for us? Yeah. So it hits different, it really hits different aspects and facets, both at an individual and at collective scale for our country. Yeah. So I think that's the main goal of the initiative. It tries to connect both, like how it affects me as an individual and how it affects us as a community.
All right, that's good. Yeah, it wasn't long ago that the RH bill was passed. It was during the last president's term. Am I correct? Is it?
Aquino?
Yeah, I think it was Aquino's time. So again, it was pretty controversial at that time.
Mm.
But yeah, we can see some of the effects of that now.
Mm.
You can see that the barangays in our rural areas, or some of the people I know are only deciding to have just one kid instead of having a lot of kids compared to a long time ago. So
Yeah.
Yeah, that's an interesting. Would you be able to give maybe lay of the land currently, Shilina? Like, give us an idea. What is being implemented in the schools, or maybe at the barangay level, or in how is that being encouraged to have these tough conversations with students or children and parents currently in our Filipino culture?
I think the reason why that's the main point why the branding that we went for this initiative is tough conversations, because it really is, yeah, a hard topic to come by, especially that
agree.
there are a lot of people, yeah, there are a lot of people who feel uncomfortable talking about sex. They feel like it's something that's too vulgar to talk about. It's
Yeah.
not really that normalized.
Mm.
So right now, but that's why it's really important that we start these type of initiatives in order to start the conversation, to the point that it doesn't become a tough conversation anymore. It's just a normalized conversation.
Yeah.
I think right now, like in the landscape of like at a city level or at the university, there are more progressive policies, or like more progressive. We have our CSG is composed of like different branches of the government. It's mapped out from the national level.
Mhm.
So we have the executive, legislative, and judiciary branch. So I believe that our legislative efforts as well in this institution, in policy making for our students, is that we try to make more progressive policies as well. But we try to understand that we also want to balance it out with what the guiding principles of the institution is.
Mm.
We still understand that it's a Catholic institution.
True.
That's why, so we try to meet a common ground, or like try to see a middle area
Mm.
for both trying to open up the conversation while still maintaining the values and guiding
Yeah.
principles that the university stands by.
Yeah, that was why I was curious at first, because Xavier University, yeah, it's a traditionally Catholic institution, and yeah, that's good to know that we
Yeah.
are having an open and honest conversation about such a taboo topic. Because when I was young, I don't recall having sex education at any point during grade school. So, yeah, what do you think is the right age for sex education in your opinion?
I believe that it really needs to be opened up like as early as like preteens enter the age of puberty. That's the time they're more confused about their bodies, because it's really changing. I remember that I could recall that we did have talks about it during my preteen years, but it was more on seminars, not really an integrated topic throughout our curriculum. Like we were told about the things that happens when we engage in sexual acts, or for example, on how to try and cope up with going into puberty and all that. But it wasn't it wasn't really unfiltered or uncensored. That's why I think that as early as possible, we try to inform. We try to inform usually at the preteen or like the pubescent stages of the youth about how it shouldn't be a taboo topic at all. Because I think that's one thing why the topic on sexual health also gets like reduced at or like it's trivialized at a lower level, because when you hear the word sexual health, you automatically think it's about sexual intercourse or like the act itself. When it's actually more than that. There are like medical factors or psychological factors. There is more on gender identity and how we express ourselves and our sexuality as individuals. That's why I think as early as the youth are able to like experience these changes among their bodies, we also need to open up discussion so that it doesn't get to be reduced into something that's just vulgar or something just about sexual intercourse, since it's really multi-layered. There are a lot of things or aspects about sexual health.
Yeah, well said. Yeah, true, because it can get confusing for kids. Like when we went through that, when we there's like, what is this? What am I feeling right now? It's good that there's really an honest discussion as early as possible about your body and being comfortable being in that body.
Shilina, in terms of the webinars, is if you're under the age of 18, are those that kind of age group encouraged to join the webinars? And how do they do that?
They're still encouraged, since we're inviting senior high school students as well. So I think a lot of those from grade 11 and grade 12 are still around 17 or 18. So they're still encouraged, but we ensured that the speakers we invited will also put their points across to the participants at the most professional way, to ensure that it isn't, it's not misconstrued or like miscommunicated to something else or subliminal. We encourage them as well, those even the participants who aren't 18 yet, because the speakers we have invited are seasoned, and we expect them to put across the information in the most professional way possible that the youth can also understand.
Yeah, I think it's a great thing that you're inviting a different age groups in the webinars, and if they would need parental consent, I mean, if they are 15 or years old or even younger, is that would they need to somehow give formal permission as a parent to join?
It's just through the registration.
Just through the registration, okay.
On the participants, yeah.
Okay. So the parents can register their child, basically give permission through the registration process, and then they have access. And is this a free initiative, or is there is there a payment? How does that work?
I know, it's a free initiative.
Oh, that's great. That's great. That would be definitely encouraging for some parents, because it can be, if it is still a taboo thing. I mean, I remember as early as kindergarten, I was curious about girls already. You have maybe your friend's older sister, right? I remember, I think I was in third, I want to say maybe third grade, as early as third grade. I had we're going to do story time. So I was at my friend's house back in third grade, and he has an older brother who had like a big pile of Playboy magazines.
I remember those. Penthouse.
Yeah, Penthouse, right? And this is usually the typical setting, right? Where us young boys are going to be curious and looking at some of these things that maybe aren't the best education, right? In terms of how a young boy should be thinking about sex.
Yeah.
And that's where most of us got our sex education back in the day, from the dirty magazines.
Right. And so he pulled out this, it was an old reel machine, right? It's not even a VHS, right? For any, maybe the younger audience doesn't even know what a reel machine is, but before VHS, there are reel machines that it was like the size of a VCR, right? And so you would have to manually turn the reel machine. And so he puts this reel machine on and starts turning it, and it projects the picture on the wall, right? And so he's showing me this. I didn't know what to expect. And there's a dog. Okay, there's just a dog in the scene. I was like, what is this? This dog is kind of, and then this woman comes into the scene and starts having sex with the dog, and I was like,
oh my God.
Yeah, that was my first, and I felt so uncomfortable. And my friend was like in his Mickey Mouse underwear, and this is a weird thing to be involved. I wanted to go home, like I felt kind of like that clammy feeling in your hands. I think I was pale. I was like, I didn't know what to think. What am I watching here? This is disturbing. I wanted to go home and not go back to that scene, but it has stuck with me through the years. You mentioned earlier about the psychological approach to the education of the tough conversations. Can you expand a little bit on that?
Since I think when we go through like changes, sometimes we more than the changes
Shilina,
saying physically.
are you still there? Hello?
Might be a connection. Let me check.
Oh, we lost her.
All right, we'll just wait.
Since her discussion more is on consent and sexual assault, actually, I found it a bit appalling that you had to go through that when you were younger. Yeah.
Yeah.
Shocking, and I think it's yeah, that does happen, and it's things like that that actually can be mentally traumatizing or scary for a few. There were a lot of people confused after such experiences and all that. And then I think the what the speaker would try to do then for that topic on, for example, consent and sexual assault, like the psychological factors in trying to like to factor in our own psychological understanding on sexual health. It's trying to make sense of the emotions that we feel during these changes, during the times that we see it happening before us, so that we also so we also have a proper processing of how to react or like what to do when in times that we do experience these types of like things.
You mentioned earlier about the Dept mandating. What was that again? That they mandated sex education.
I think I'm gonna, hello.
Oh, sorry. Okay, I think we're having a connection issue here.
Hello.
Yeah, sorry about that. Are you can hear us? Okay.
Hello.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay.
Okay, are you
Can
we're
you
coming
hear
in
me?
clear?
Okay. Yeah.
I was just trying to get some clarification on the Dept mandate for sex education earlier. Is that for public schools or for all schools? And what grades did you mention that was for? I'm not sure if I caught that one earlier.
I I am not like that much of a scholar of how they like passed that like that mandate, but I did come across an article stating that how DepEd will try to integrate it in subjects like Araling Panlipunan, on physical education, on science, like so in
Okay.
that way, yeah. So I think it's gonna be more on like around like the later years during elementary and to the like secondary level of education, so like high school. Because like I said a while ago, they're trying to put it at an angle where we see the connection on how it affects us as individuals and as a community.
Yeah. Yeah, you were talking about a while ago about finding the middle ground, and I think that will be the key, since I think we are still traditionally a conservative
Yeah.
culture, and we have to approach it in a way that's science based, and at the same time giving respect to our conservative values. So, what are some of the ways that we can achieve that?
I think the best way to do that is to focus more on like not trying to reduce the topic on sexual health to just innuendos or like jokes, especially what's happening right now, what we're experiencing when we promoted this initiative. A lot of people usually joke about it, especially the people that we invite to join or to participate in the initiative, because sexual health, so maybe it's about sex, or they joke about how will there be live demonstrations, ganyan. So like I think in order for us to like try to level it off also with the values the institution stands by, is through like gauging at the topic and at an objective angle or point of view, where we talk more on like, for example, on HIV or STDs, sexually transmitted diseases. Like, I think usually people also have a misconception that when we talk about sexual health, or when sex education is being laid out to the table for promoting premarital sex, or maybe teenagers or the youth engaging to it more often, when actually in order to maintain that objective point of view, we talk about the topic as it is, and then try to extend on the inherent harms that comes along if you don't practice it safely, like, or not really practice it safely, but do things without precautions or like without safeguards.
Yeah. Well said. And yeah, it's going to be, for me, in my opinion, it's going to be very challenging in the long run, especially with how the media portrays sex in everywhere. It's
Yeah.
everywhere. It's like in the movies, even in ads. You remember the Tanduay ads, Ben, before?
Yeah.
Why does she have to wear a skimpy red bikini to promote some alcohol? You were talking about that a few months ago, and yeah, it's just everywhere. So kids are going to be exposed to that at a very young age. So you have to be ahead of the curve
Actually.
all the time when you're raising kids.
It's an uphill battle for
Yeah,
sure.
it's an uphill battle.
Yeah.
I mean,
Honestly, I think that's one thing like that also promotes the stigma that comes along the topic of sex, is that it's usually like the topic is seen provocatively around media, for example, on TV shows or on series where the youth or like teenagers engage in it a lot. Like, teenagers or minors are hypersexualized. So I think that's the reason. But I think the problem if we try to like, what do you call this, police our children or like the youth from like seeing things like this, it's just gonna make them more curious or gonna make them more confused about it. We don't actually get to refute or debunk the stigmas that were created because of how the media portrays sex. That's why opening up the discussion is important, so that we debunk how the media like portrays it as sex being just sex and not more of it being the health or on how it affects us individually and as a community.
and you mentioned the sexual expression earlier, and that how is that? How would you encourage, like, if you were having a discussion with a family member or a cousin, and this topic came up of sexual expression, like what does that sound like, or how do you encourage sexual expression? Is that like through works of art, through verbal poetry, or like how do you encourage that?
Actually, it can come in different forms. Like, but I think the best way to start it, especially at like widely conservative setting, is just to slowly integrate it in conversations, like talk about it until it progresses into something that like is a normal topic to discuss on. Since on sexual expression, usually we just segregated to like being straight and being gay. That's usually how it goes, especially like before we were introduced to the different different like sexual orientations in the like LGBTQ plus spectrum. It goes way beyond it goes way beyond like the four letters in that like in the movement that's like really stated there. I think the best way like to promote it or like for people to understand gender expression is just like trying to forward the discussion on it, because it can be really expressed in different forms. Like gender expression usually pertains to how you would express yourself. Like for example, if you were biologically born as a woman or a female, then you would expect, if you were cisgender, that would be your gender expression. You'd express yourself to what's like conventionally associated to being born as a woman. But for others, they can be transgender, that's their gender expression. Like they identify themselves as, if they were born a man but they identify themselves as a woman and they express themselves as a woman, then their gender expression would be transgender. I think it really goes in different ways. For other people, it goes on how it goes, for example, for artists, maybe they portray it in their art. For others, they portray it or express it through the way they dress, the way they look, the way they bring themselves up to other people. And for others, it's just really opening up the conversation on gender expression and how it's not, it doesn't create that, it's not dichotomous. Like it's just not black and white. It's more of like it being in the gray area.
Yeah, it's also our responsibility as parents. I think it always starts in the household. What kind of media do you want to introduce to your kids? For me, if I want to introduce some films or some movies that I would recommend my kids we be watching, I'd pick some of the movies that are more refined rather than the hypersexualized one. For example, there's this movie, it's an animation, but I really find that it's one of the best animations I've ever seen, A Perfect Blue by Satoshi Kon. It's like an examination of the male gaze So it's a critique of animation in how hypersexualized it is in Japanese culture. So yeah, those are some of the movies that we can watch and learn from. There's a lot that we can watch, not just the usual things. Yeah. So yeah, it starts in the household. That's my opinion. And then yeah, we can have an open discussion as a community, as a society. That's a start. Having seminars, not not keeping it as taboo, as back in the day as we used to. Yeah.
And I
I
think
agree with you on that, on how it should start at the family, because I think that's the reason why it's a hard topic then to come by outside of it, because you were never used to it growing up. So I really agree that it's important that it starts at the household.
Yeah, because it took me a long time myself, and then growing on that, and really being comfortable with the topic of sex. Because as I've mentioned a while ago, my education in sex was mostly centered on the dirty magazines, the VHS, Betamax VHS tapes that contain some,
high class Betamax over here. Wow.
So yeah, that's it's a good thing that we're discussing this.
Yeah, back in I was in 6th grade when in public school in California, when you are your parents are required to either provide their consent or not, and my parents being from the Philippines actually opted out for me to join the sex education session. And so I believe, from what I remember, I was the only person who opted out. I had to leave the classroom, go to a different classroom. Another teacher had to basically babysit me while everyone else got their sex education. But I think that was unfortunate, because at that age, I mean, I don't know about the culture here, but the young girls at least in California, are very fast. As early as 6th grade, they are having sexual experiences already.
Damn.
Yeah, as early as 6th grade. It's not uncommon to have somebody's daughter being left home alone after school. Yeah. And of course, there's going to be some young, dumb boy, right? Who's more than willing to go over to that house and bring a couple of friends, right? And who knows what's going to happen. So as early as that, I mean, I definitely, as a parent, I'm still trying to figure that out, because my daughter's I'm just for sure concerned about these topics of how do I discuss with her when she gets to whatever the proper age is about consent. I mean, in grade school, again, I'm going back to my old memories. There was, if you wore a skirt or a dress on a Friday, there was games that the young boys would have, like Friday flip up day, where you would purposely flip up the skirt of the girl and start running around, right? And those that was a normal thing. Of course, it wasn't encouraged by the teachers or anything, but
it happens.
These things are happening as early as grade school.
Hey, I think it's really important that we talk about that's why it was really close to my heart when the topic on consent and sexual assault, because things like that does happen, and it's actually really normalized. It's not the type of things that you only see in the movies. It actually happens in real life. So I think that's why this topic really needs to be talked about, especially at the household, how the moment where, especially women who experience sexual assault or have fallen victim to it, where no means no, and how not saying anything isn't also considered as consent. By the moment that you feel violated, or the moment that these for example, young boys overstep and they aren't being called out, since it's a culture that's normalized, I think that's why it's really important to talk about this as well, so that we not only get to protect our children from cases on sexual assault, but also to call them out if at like early ages they're being unable to do things like as crude as like flipping over skirts and then just laughing about it right after. First thing, I think one thing that doesn't get covered often as well is that usually people who experience sexual harassment don't understand or become disoriented right after they experience it. Like it really takes days, or even like for some it takes so much longer for them to process what happened and understand that I was actually being sexually assaulted and then I was violated and all that. I think for our topic right now, it's more on trying to discuss with before you do anything that's more systematic or like bureaucratic or like try to report to authorities or whatever, I think it's also trying to make sense of what you're feeling, because there are a lot of victims who are dismissed for reporting because they only reported like months after or even longer after they experienced sexual assault or harassment. They usually get dismissed for not saying it early, or they victims are usually blamed for the things that they had completely no control over. Yeah, so I think it's really important as well that the first thing that we do before we try to like go to the system to correct or like to call out the people who violated us or who harassed us, I think it's really important that these victims also get the proper like processing of trying to make sense of how they feel after experiencing what they did experience.
Yeah, and there are even cases I remember before where the victim does not report because of shame. That's pretty common. Yeah, it's pretty common here, and I think it has something to do also with because of that culture that we have. Since we are traditionally patriarchal culture.
Yeah.
Very, very conservative. Still is, I think, but we're just gaining traction in this issue right now. Yeah, and hopefully, we can address that issue.
Actually, I think one of the reasons why victims also get scared of stepping forward and telling their stories on sexual assault and harassment is that people dismiss their stories by making them feel as if it's their fault. They try to ask if what they were wearing during that occasion, or if like why they got like drunk or wasted in the first place and all that.
Why were you hanging out with these guys or something like that?
Actually, then it's really funny because there are still women or there are still people who get to do the same things with the right people in the same situation, only that they weren't violated. Because at the end of the day, whether if like I think it's important also to discuss that consent never comes from the clothes that we are wearing or the state that we are in. I think it always goes back to like us being fully aware and capable of making the decisions for us. So by the moment a person oversteps that, regardless of what you were wearing that time or whether you were intoxicated or not, it doesn't give them the free pass to do whatever they want to do with you.
Yeah, well said.
Unfortunately, I have to admit, there was a time in my life where I had that naive or really straight out, probably really dumb thinking where it was, I would say, oh, it's her fault. She was showing she was wearing skimpy clothes or something like that, right?
Actually,
I mean, it's all too common, I would assume, to hear that. Is that some of the feedback that it sounds like that you've been getting?
Actually, those are things that I also believed in before when I was younger, because we were made to believe it, that at the end of the day, it's still like as if how we like dress measures the respect that we have for ourselves. I still remember back in like grade school where our teachers would always like prohibit us from like wearing clothes later on in our lives if ever we end up like for example like later teens to like early 20s, where they tell us to not post photos of us wearing bikinis, for example, or like not wearing clothing that's provocative, because it means that we are suggesting or we are inviting men to pry on us. Like I think that's something that's common. Actually, that's where I understand the pain points of victims as well to talk about it, because all they do is like, for example, wearing clothes like this and that isn't for them to like invite people to do things to them. It's for them to express themselves because they feel more confident or they feel more beautiful in how they dress, if they dress that way and all that. And I think that's also not really actually we had a lot of good feedback for the initiative, since a lot of people are curious about sexual health and education, but we were already trying to like preempt possible like outdated, I think that's safe to say, perceptions on sexual health. Yeah, like that could be one thing, because even back when like early 2000s, like 2010s maybe, that's always been the mindset, how like it's not like if ever you don't want to like if you don't want to experience that, then like show yourself a little bit of self-respect through the clothes that you wear, which isn't the case at all, because there are rape cases, for example, for like children as young as 1 year old or even months.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I think there was
Wow.
an exhibit, yeah, like an exhibit of like clothes that were displayed along Ayala Mall, and also it was displayed here in XU. I don't know what organization initiated that, but it was an initiative
I remember
where
seeing those
we
pictures
invited,
online.
yeah, like you saw the clothes of the victims during the times that they were assaulted or violated, and there it really dated back to like as young as like younger than 1 year old, like children
Jesus.
children who are as old as like 9 months or 7 months. So it just goes to show that it's never really the victim's fault, or never how the victim dresses or how the victim expresses him or herself. It's really about the harasser being called out, since it's never for them to make that call if the victim wanted it or not.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. But I just have to put it out there that when I do see like a niece, putting her selfies up on Facebook, and she's wearing like her small bikini or showing her cleavage or something, I just can't. Maybe I'm a little bit old school in that sense, because it's like, you probably shouldn't be doing that, but like you said, it might be a self-expression in
good point.
in their way.
But for me, it's more of protecting them rather than the other way around, because I remember I was also guilty of that with my girlfriend, now wife. I would tell her, you shouldn't wear this because we're going out. So I don't want other men whistling, and I will get into a fight because of that. So so it's more of protecting them rather than actually telling them you shouldn't because I'm telling you not to.
Yeah, I think it's also at a different context. If like for example like your nieces who are really young who do that, I think that's when we try to put under safeguards as well, because they aren't at the legal age of consent, and that's the reason why there are like terms and agreements in social media that if you're at the appropriate age to like be on it, because there will be like for example like predators on social media that will take advantage of children being posted online. So I think that's where we draw the line between the difference as well of what the extents and limitations are of sexual expression. I think if you aren't at the legal age or if you're still a minor, that's when we try to create those safeguards as well. But for example, if a girlfriend or like a partner were to do it, I think more than trying to protect them and tell them or like scolding them that this shouldn't be what you'd be wearing, since boys will be like, I don't know, maybe like drooling over you or be whistling or catcalling you. I think what we should be doing is we call out these men who do that, who perpetrate the need for us to feel like we need to protect our girlfriends or our partners, because I think it's never the responsibility of these women to like adjust as well for those who are for men who or for people in general who can't keep it in their pants. So like I think what we should be doing is calling out those people who do it. But for for example for minors, I think I totally agree with that we shouldn't be posting like pictures of them. Yeah.
They shouldn't be on Instagram in the first place or even doing TikTok at that age.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, well said. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, we should be calling out those people instead of telling the women what to wear. Yeah, I totally agree with that.
Something that come to mind, we've been talking a lot about kind of the underage or the younger displays of sexual expression, but there's another thing that I was just reminded of grown adults, in their 20s, 30s, whatever. People, I remember this friend of a friend, and this friend was telling me that her girlfriend had never experienced an orgasm, doesn't even know really how to even approach that, and she was well into her 20s, I think. Really? Probably close to over 25, and we were mentioning about sexual health, and are those also types of topics that'll be in the webinars, like
actually we did come across questions like that one since in our registration the participants are encouraged to ask questions if they have any. So we will be opening them up to the open forum so that the speakers can also address those questions and concerns.
Okay. There's a interesting museum in Southern California. I think I believe it was Los Angeles, and it's a small museum. And I forget what it's called, but it's a sex museum basically, and you can go in and see the different types of devices, let's say, that were used as play toys or sex toys, and it's pretty interesting. And then they have like bondage, kind of like old school bondage things that they put on display. And I remember it's a small two-story museum, and in the second floor they have this kind of like clear box with these long rubber gloves that go up to your elbow, and you insert your arms into this kind of display case, and inside the display case you can actually hold with of course the rubber gloves on the sex toys. So there's like a bunch of different types of sex toys inside of this display box, and you can pick different dildos up and all this kind of stuff, right? So it kind of gives like a fun I don't know if you call it fun or whatever, maybe just like an interesting textual experience in terms of sex, and you can kind of see like, wow, this thing is, like, you hold this thing and it's like, wow, this thing's like a horse or something. Are those in terms of masturbation and those types of topics, is that also a topic of discussion in the webinars?
Yeah, actually there are a lot of questions that are like aligned to topics like that, like for example on masturbating, on like, or there were questions about orgasms as well and all that, and how is it true that if I think there was a question about her losing her virginity and being accused of like not being a virgin when she did because she didn't bleed the first time, things like that. There are questions like that, and then we are encouraging as well the speakers to be open to types of questions such as that one, because I think the reason why a lot of people are so confused or para, what do you call this, curious about this is because it doesn't get talked about that often. So it will be talked about, topics like that on like, it's really unfiltered or uncensored, given that it will be brought up in the most professional way possible.
All right. Interesting.
So for maybe in general, do you have any tips before we wrap this up, like maybe for parents, to how they can bring these topics into discussion, whether it's watching a movie, having how to actually deploy that kind of conversation in the household?
I think my like what I can like relate to like parents and like how this can happen in like households, and like try to open up the discussion on it without it being like a bit awkward or a bit of feeling a bit off for the children and for the parents, is like to try to educate them early on through like family friendly movies or shows that actually discusses, I think you brought it up a while ago, that you had like animated shows or like that discussed about gender identity or expression and about the self. There are I believe that there are animations about it. I also saw, I think it was posted along CNN Philippines, where there was a children's book about a young girl going through her first time in menstruation and all that. I think there are kid-friendly and family-friendly shows that do open up that topic. But I think more importantly is that parents should keep an open mind when talking about it. It's more backwards to try and police our children and gatekeep them from these topics. We should encourage them to be part of like webinars like this. It's really an opportunity. I know it's gonna be a bit hard given that we're at a conservative setting. Our context is in the Philippines. We really like go against the idea of premarital sex and all that. But it's not really there that then draws a fine line between indoctrination and education. All we're doing is we're educating them in cases where they will be put in a situation that's very new to them and they wouldn't know what to do. So I think the most important thing is like apart from like creating norms or like cultures within the household is to keep an open mind of what the children can do or can be thinking and or can ask, so that the parents also wouldn't be caught off guard when these children do ask about it.
All right. Yeah, well said. And yeah, it certainly was tough, but it's a healthy discussion.
Yeah.
Hashtag tough conversations.
Tough conversations, but it was healthy. So yeah, thank you so much, Shilina, for joining us. It was really fun. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much. And just to close it out, where can people find the hashtag tough conversations?
Conversations initiative. Yeah, it's on Facebook. We have a Facebook page, Tough Conversations, but you can also see it at the Xavier University Central Student Government page. You can like that page in order to get more updates from the initiative. We also have a Twitter account. Let me see. It's CSG Sexual Health. The handle is at CSG Sexual Health. Hashtag Tough Conversations. You can go to these sites on Twitter and on Facebook in order to receive more updates and also to know more about sexual health and the speakers that we'll be inviting to gauge on these topics.